Uber or Bolt would by now have seen their prices going up. And for those of us who buy fuel, also are seeing an increase in the cost of petroleum products. Raymond Aqua is here. Raymond, you've been telling me about how recently the cost of transporting yourself to work has increased. George Rafi of our business desk is also here. George, good morning. I haven't seen you today, so good morning to you.
Good morning.
I like your how you've joined the bearded gang.
You looking? I'm trying to be like Kojo Yankson.
Hey, good.
We drew a trap.
Raymond, let's look at this from this point. I mean, we've been talking about our benchmark, $61, now $109. And if you do the calculation, 78% increase in our benchmark revenue. At this point, we should be thinking of cushioning the Ghanaians, shouldn't we?
Yeah, in fact, ideally, that's the kind of conversation one would have expected. If the situation in November 2021 was precarious, when we had to suspend the price stabilization and recovery levy, this is a more precarious situation we find ourselves. In fact, it's higher, and the other factors that are compounding the current problem. People should not forget that. That includes the exchange rate anyway. I'm not talking about its impact on the fuel price. I'm talking about its impact on other parts of the cost of living of people in this country. It is not the ordinary man's fault directly that most of the things we consume are imported, and it makes it difficult for you to stay within the same pricing regime. I've heard people say that beginning of year to this time, goods have gone up between 15 to 30%. If you push it any further, you are worsening the current state of people. Not long ago, we told you what the Statistical Service survey had indicated, that 2/3 of people have still not returned to pre-COVID income levels. So already they are struggling. And these things compound their struggling. But the terrible part of this fuel price thing is that, one, when the price go up at the pump, the gentleman who's bringing food from Sankore or any of the other places where the major plantation and those things are happening would certainly say, I'm increasing it because cost of producing and inputs have gone up. They would also say cost of transporting it to Accra has gone up. Yes. Then the woman who is the queen mother in the market, who will take over and distribute to other women, would equally increase her own because she's also considering her life and the other things that have impacted her. By the time the final retailer gets the food product and sell a malata or kaneshi to we the people, we would have had compounding cost increments that would have made the product go to the level that sometimes will be unbearable. So if you're having a conversation at home about how much is enough to keep the house together, about how much is required to make sure that everybody is fed properly and we move along, you are increasing your child's transportation to school if you are not taking the child to school. And you have to increase the amount of money they are spending on food too. Personally, there's a very nice way I check this. If I'm not sitting in, let's say, one of those taxi services, if I'm not using Uber or Bolt, yes, I've seen since the beginning of this year, prices move from what used to be 16 cedi at dawn to at least 25 cedi. Watch it. And at least, do you know why I'm looking at that? And the dawn is different because dawn, the presumption is that on one hand, even though you might have a difficulty with availability of cars, you may also have the traffic being easier. So, I mean, mostly supposed to be lower. So from 16 cedi beginning of the year, I'm now having to pay around 25 cedi. On the other side, if it's in the evening that I'm living here, that's a different. I mean, I can't remember the last time I paid below 30 cedi when it used to be around 20 cedi.
Okay.
So they are sending me the signal that all of these increments of the period is impacting on the price that I'm supposed to pay. And I suspect that other people will be paying the same thing. These people do not run the same structure like the way the GPRTs will come with only 15% and all of the other ones. They actually do it as and when, and it reflects. You see within a matter of days or so.
Yeah.
So the reality is that people are struggling, and the quality they could afford previously, because you have to cut back something to make up the usual things you do in a day.
Yeah.
And children go to school. You have to eat. You can't say that you're not eating.
Raymond, not to even cut you. I mean, if you want to even look at the inflation numbers and
Yeah.
the fact that, and that some say that the real, use the quote word, still of your value is inflation. Now, if you're holding a 10 Ghana cedis last year, that gets you a bowl of rice and maybe kinky or something, or fish or something. That same value as at today, that money is not getting the same value of good or commodity that you want to purchase.
That's the point.
Because when you look at the bigger economy size or whatever, things have not been done to check that rise in the value of goods and services. So if you're holding that money, it is not going to get you that same quantity of good today as you're purchasing. So it is telling the value that you have or that you hold in the currency. And that is even one critical thing that we also have to look at.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that I also want to point out is that, yes, I mean, most of these firms are not for the Christmas. And definitely someone has to pay for this.
Yeah.
But just recently I had an interview or a discussion with the president of the Association of Ghana Industries. And you realize that even the producers are also worried now, because it is not just about passing on the price to the consumer, but also the ability for that hike to impact on demand for the good as well. So they are also being very strategic that, should I pass on everything to the consumer? Even petrol that is seen as an elastic commodity, when you engage the OMCs, they'll tell you that anytime there's a price increase for the next 2 weeks, demand is affected. Because if Kojo was using like 3 cars or 2 cars in a week, he wants to take a sit back and say, do I need to use all these cars in a week?
Or not go to places.
Or go to certain places. So in the next 2 weeks, consumption drops. So now the producer is also being very savvy that how should I manage the current challenge that we are facing right now? Because someone has to pay for the cost. When you engage those who bring in these electronic products, they are telling you that because of taxes, depreciating CD and all the rest, you see that our phones price will be going up very soon. Television is going up. When you engage these guys who bring in the products, Samsung and all the rest, someone has to pay the cost.
I mean, imagine you live in Weija or Community 25 or whatever. You're unemployed. You want a job. You have to actually attend interviews. You have to actually go to places to try and seek a job.
Yeah.
You have limited resources. You have to choose between taking a car from Weija into town or from Community 25 into town and eating. So honestly, which choice will you make at this point? So this will start having a knock-on effect on all kinds of things. And we've talked about all the other pressures, but let's stick with the fuel itself. Let's not forget that about 40% of the price of this fuel is in taxes. Now I want us to do a very quick exercise. You guys will know this. So you tell me, when I mention the levy, tell me whether it still applies or whether it's been removed. Okay. So the road fund levy.
Yeah, it's still there.
That's 48 pesos. The energy fund levy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a small 1 peso. The price stabilization and recovery levy, that has been suspended.
No.
It's been brought
It's
back.
been
It's
brought
been
back.
brought
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, it's been brought
Okay,
back,
that's 14 pesos. Sanitation and pollution levy,
Yeah, it's still there.
10 pesos. Energy sector recovery levy,
Yeah, that's there.
20 pesos.
It's the one we
Special-
can't touch.
Special petroleum tax,
Yeah.
46 pesos. Primary distribution margin,
Those margins are still there.
11 pesos. Bust margin,
Yeah.
9
a
pesos.
very some will classify that as a controversial levy, because should we still have a levy there in subsidizing a
It's-
company that is more
Yeah.
seen as
It's still there.
full-fledged
still there.
private entity, if I should use that in quote here.
It's still there. And I'll mention it again in a moment. Fuel marking margin,
It's still there.
marketers margin.
It's still
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's still
Okay. And then, of course, the dealers and operators margin.
Yeah.
there.
Now, there's also the energy debt recovery levy, 49 pesos. That's the biggest margin, the biggest levy on fuel. My question is, are any of these levies being used for what they are meant for?
I think it's debatable, as in
Which has been going on for a long time.
for a long time. The back
Especially,
and
you know
forth
why we
argument and
focused
all the rest.
not long ago about this price stabilization recovery levy?
Yeah.
All the 3 elements that it was supposed to be used for, there was predominant concentration on only the recovery part, but the other 2 became like a controversy or sort. Then it was easy for government now, instead of responding to, this was the amount of money in there and this amount we have used, to say we have suspended it. So for a period of time, the government said we brought it back because the money in there
That is used to subsidize is finished.
It's
So they
finished.
still
So
know-
we need to accumulate
Is
more
it
to
premix and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
the
yeah.
other
to,
products
to
as
do
well?
that. To be fair, the transparency in that sector is also another different thing to talk about.
So
But
that's my challenge.
the argument people are making here is now, let's look at these taxes. Yes, there are some that you have used for your bonds and all of that, but the rest of them, can we in the interim hold on to them so that we get some reprieve for the ordinary Ghanaian until the future time where we are able to bounce back or the prices go back to be stabilized? Let's not forget, the entire energy sector levies were introduced because our petrol prices have gone very low.
Yeah.
We were told we will not feel the effect of it because it was very, very low. Now we are at 100 and something.
So typically, government repurposes revenue as they
Yeah,
wish.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, we've been collecting what's it called? A part of the VAT is for NHIA, right?
Yeah.
But every time the money goes into government, a lesser amount comes out to pay for NHIA services. So government is I mean it's a norm that they will repurpose revenue. So even now that we are clearly indicating that we are getting far more from our sale of crude than ever before because of the increased prices. The question is, why are we surprised that it is not making its way back into the fuel sector? It is not making its way back into affecting the cost of fuel for you and I. It's finding it's evaporating into the great big consolidated government atmosphere.
And it's interesting, Kojo, because I remember the other time I had a conversation with the Deputy Minister of Energy, and this argument, or I put this question to him about, the windfall, where is it going to? And it's like, government is still having pressures on its revenue and all the rest, and therefore, if any extra income has come in, they have to use it in other areas. But there's a reason why we budget, so that when X amount comes in and there's a windfall, can it be pushed again into that particular sector than saying that, there's windfall in crude prices, let's take it and pay
that's true.
Raymond Akwa's allowances. You understand me? So I find it very interesting that when these things are going on and people are feeling the heat, and government itself, you're talking about controlling expenditure, fueling judges, state officers and all the rest. When these price goes up, it hits its expenditure itself. At a time when you're trying to check your expenditure, another way that you can do that is that when you manage to control the price, its impact on the amount that you are spending on the police, the military, the ambulances and all the rest in checking your expenditure. So it's not about just the consumers that might be unrealistic when they are pushing for some support in these times. It also affects you as a government in expenditure. So I struggle when I look at all these things, and it appears that there's little being done. I remember yesterday I tried engaging some of the OMCs about also this argument about them taking a second look at their margins. And I had an opportunity to see their pricing index and module. And it appears that what they have put out is even the lowest band. Prices could have hit more than 9 Ghana cedis a liter.
Really?
So they are also trying their best to absorb some of the shocks. So if they are doing that, then what about the other actors in this space? Government is one.
I think we've reached a point where, like the CEO of the NPA said, we need to take a second look at our deregulation. I say a
Deregulation policy,
policy. I say a second look because, look, in all of the things we're talking about, we've talked about today fuel prices being $109 on the world market, and all of a sudden we are all talking about how we need to, the pricing window, it takes it into consideration and it goes up. Now, we do know, and in the past you've seen some oil marketing companies actually wait for their particular stock to get finished before they increase.
Some too would never wait.
Some too would never wait. In fact, in the past, you've seen situations where when they're about to increase fuel prices, when you go, they say no fuel until the increment. And it's all part of the gains that you make within the private sector. What we all would know is that today as we speak, a lot of these entities that are increasing the price of fuel already have their stock in Ghana or have ordered it already. So we need to look at the balance between, how much it's going to cost them tomorrow. Has any of them actually agreed, hedged it? Because right now it's the private sector that is bringing it into the country.
But that's a very expensive instrument as when you talk about the hedging.
Exactly.
So
So some may want to leave it at that. Others would also want to anticipate and say, okay, so for the next 3 months, let me just get in petroleum for the next 3 months. That can can take care of me for the next 3 months. Within that period, of course, the capitalist nature of the world is that if it's going up, I may want to push it up. But for me, having said that, we take a second look at it also. Where I have a challenge in all of this is that today, just yesterday, the benchmark value reduction policy reversal took effect. Now,
Compounding.
yes, and that's where I'm coming from. Just yesterday, now vehicles, initially it was 30%, but now it's 10%. So it's like government is staggering it. So and then other goods and services that were captured under that were going to be, now we have the 50% being reduced to 30%. So automatically, they're going to be paying more at the port for some of these goods. What it means is that I will be transferred to you. That one, we all understand it. So when it happens like that, we also would need to think about the Ghanaian by cushioning him. By cushioning the Ghanaian, there's a reason when we said we're going to introduce the e-levy, we automatically scrapped road tolls. It's part of cushioning because you're going to be paying something more. So if we have introduced this, can we then say the price stabilization and recovery levy? Let's have a second thought. Let's think about it.
I think that Winston has made a very valid point about taking a second look at this whole price deregulation policy. But also, and again, I stand to be educated. I just want to speak the street language and forget about all the finance and the economics. That when you are managing a space, there should be always reserves and savings to fall on and all the rest. What has happened to all those things that matters? Raymond helped me and all the rest, that when you are managing a space, there are supposed to be reserves, shock absorbers and all those things. Have we got into that space where everything is hand to mouth, pay as you go? And also let us not forget that another critical reason why we are having all these pressures has to do with the stability of the Ghana cedi. And the rate at which it's been depreciating. And these OMCs, when you engage them, they are really struggling. Their capital is taking a hit because at every point in time, they need more Ghana cedis to get the same volumes of crude oil or petroleum products to bring down. And that's why they're even asking for a separate FX regime where it can be even staggered for them. But they are struggling to get that as well.
Absolutely. And that's not the only thing that's going up in price, by the way. A friend of mine, one of the LPG drivers, says liquefied petroleum gas is now 10 cedi 20 pesos per liter. Per kilo. Which translates to for a 14.5 kilogram cylinder, 150 Ghana cedis.
And could you want to describe people from cutting down trees? Want to describe people from using charcoal and all the rest? What it's going to do is that we are getting back to that stage where people are saying that if gas is expensive, let me do my GBD.
That's true.
It's a big shock to the system. We need to continue this conversation on social media. Use the hashtag JoySMS. Tell us how you are coping with the rise in fuel prices. Okay, we'll be sharing your tweets and thoughts shortly. Right now, though, time for some messages from our partners. When we come back, we're having a critical look at the secondary school lever.
Coffee in your cup. Enjoy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy.